Hello, I'm Brian Foster, and today we're talking about Spiritism, and it's essentially I'm going through Chapter 10 of A Wanderer in the Spirit Land. Chapter 10 is titled My House in the Twilight Zone by the Spirit Franchezzo. So if you haven't come till now, Franchezzo was a spirit, died in the end of the 19th century, and he was never a very religious person. He was raised Catholic, but didn't believe in it because of all the hypocrisy he saw. He didn't treat people that nicely, but he fell in love with this wonderful, beautiful woman, beautiful internally and externally. And when he died so early, he just was regretted that he couldn't, live with her. And then he went to a very low place, and then he fought his way back. Now he's in the lower zone. He's calling it the Twilight Lands. It'll be interesting to see what he says about his house in the Twilight Lands, because Spiritism has a lot about outposts in the lower zone, which helps, they have to actually protect where they live because there's roving gangs that try to take over their territory. So you never know. It's not an easy place. So we shall see. So let's start. Let me share. Oh, before I begin, please subscribe, hit the like button. It's very important for the algorithm. And then hit the bell so you're notified when I do go live stream. And this has been a fascinating book. I really enjoy bringing these old books in PDF versions. And I will actually, since this is in PDF, I will actually show it in the screen as I read it, so we can read along. Let me bring this up, and let me bring it up higher so you can look at it. And this is Chapter 10. My House in the Twilight Lands, Communion Between the Living and the Dead. So in my home in the Twilight Land, I rested down for a time, studying to learn more of myself and the powers I had within me, seeking to apply the lessons I had learned in my wanderings. My chief instructor at this time was a man like myself in many respects, who had lived a similar life on Earth and had passed through the lower spheres, as I was now doing, and who had become a dweller in the bright land of sunshine, for which he came constantly to teach and help those of the brotherhood who, like myself, were his pupils. So let's talk about that for a second. So here, this is a regular occurrence in the spirit world. Higher spirits can only stand and stay in the lower zone. It's very exhausting, especially then there's also even the dark abyss. It's even more exhausting for a higher spirit to come and make themselves dense and stay in there. And so what they usually do in these kind of rescue colonies, so to say, is that they take the people who have graduated, who have been successful, and then they put them in charge, right? And so they rotate these people. Then as they get higher and higher, they go other places. But they put the people who've gone through this whole process, kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous and places like that, where the best counselors are those who've gone through the same process of the people they're helping. So, and this is very effective. So you see this is a natural occurrence in the spirit realm. And of course, the brotherhood, now, there are a lot, when you talk about the brotherhood, there's a lot of different, you can call them NGOs, non-government organizations. So, Jesus is in charge of the spirit world, but there's a lot of people with their own organizations. Mary, Mother of Jesus, has her own organization. This person, the brotherhood, I never heard of the person who actually founded it, but they have their organization. There's other people have other organizations that help people, and you can create your own organization if you show your dedication enough and you're working for it. Then you get other spirits to help you. There's many things you can do in the spirit world, and they really, they reward initiative and hard work. So it's not like you have to work for a certain organization directly reporting to Jesus. There's organizations that exist throughout heaven that help different parts of the earth and the lower zone and the dark abyss. And they're somewhat independent. I'm sure they coordinate at the top kind of broader directions, but these are a lot of independent like NGOs. They carry on. There was likewise another teacher or guide whom I sometimes saw, whose influence over me was even greater, and from whom I learned many strange things. But as he was in a much more advanced sphere than the other, it was but seldom that I could see him as a distinct personality. His teachings came to me more as mental suggestions or inspirational discourses in answer to some questioning thought on my part. This spirit I shall not now describe to you at this time of my sojourn in the Twilight Land. I saw him but very dimly and only clearly when my progression had carried me into a brighter state. So he might have been his guardian angel, or he just might have been more of a mentor for a, a defined space, uh, defined space of time to help Franchezzo through his stages of growth. Though this man was not fully visible to me, I was often conscious of his presence and his aid, and when later on I learned that he had been my principal guardian spirit during my earthly life. There's your answer. I could easily trace many thoughts and suggestions, many of my higher aspirations, to his influence. And it was his voice that had so often spoken to me in warning or in comfort when I struggled on, almost overwhelmed with my terrible position on first entering the spirit world. So let me finish the paragraph first. In the days of darkness, I had been faintly conscious of his form flitting in and out of my little cell and soothing my terrible sufferings with his magnetism and his wonderful knowledge and power. So let's go back when he said, yeah, I could easily trace many thoughts and suggestions when he was alive. And this is one of the very important jobs of a guardian angel, is they will inspire you. And usually what they'll do is they'll inspire you to follow your own conscience. You mostly know the right thing to do. And like myself, as I was younger, is you know what the right things to do, but there's a lot of reward for not doing the right thing. And therefore you rationalize away what your conscience tells you. Now, your guardian angel will come and say, you better think about this. And of course, we don't know. We think we're on earth. We think we have one life and we better enjoy ourselves, because if we miss an opportunity, we'll never see that again. Where, on the contrary, we will always see opportunities again. We are immortal. We have multiple lives, and we will miss nothing. And the way to be rewarded and to really enjoy life, meaning life as the eternal immortal spirit, meaning life in the spirit world, is to do the best we can and to be as following the golden rule as much as we can. Now, not everybody can do that. Even I fail constantly, but to try. So now, also let me say, the guardian spirit. The guardian spirit doesn't have to be right next to you, whispering in your ear, like those cartoons, right? With the good angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. They don't have to be right with you to whisper. The guardian spirit can be, millions of miles away or wherever, but they will be plugged into you because they have like a dedicated line. It's as if you had a cell phone to your, beloved mother or father that was always on and open. And you could just talk into the cell phone, and wherever they were in the world, they could hear your voice and they could answer you. Now, of course, we all know how much sometimes we don't listen to our parents, and we have to go through the teenage years learning how that was wrong, because they're it's amazing how smart they get after we get older too. But the same way the guardian angel, a lot of times we don't listen to our spirit mentor, and that saddens them. They certainly have emotions and they're happy when we are successful. But they also know that this is a long process and we're not expected to become little saints or angels on the earth in one life. Hope this is a long process. Hopefully, what they usually wish for is that we do some small improvement, right? If we improve a little bit, little by little, life after life, it makes a big deal. And of course, what they tell us is that what happens usually is you kind of go on this line, and then you finally decide, oh, I need to work on my spirituality. That is the path I want. And then it's more of a hockey stick up in your spirituality, because then you're really dedicated to it. Okay, let me continue. On returning to the Twilight Land from the darker spheres I had visited, I felt almost like returning to a home, for, bare and shabby as my room looked, and small and narrow as it was, it yet held all my greatest treasures, my picture mirror in which I could see my beloved, and the rose and the letter she had sent me. Moreover, I had friends there, companions in misfortune like myself, and though we were as a rule such much alone, meditating upon our past mistakes and their lessons, yet at times it was very pleasant to have one friend or another come in to see you. And since we were all alike men who had disgraced ourselves by our earthly lives and were now seeking to follow the better way, there was even in that a bond of sympathy. Our life, could I make you fully realize it, would indeed seem strange to you. It was like and unlike an earthly life. For instance, we ate at times a simple sort of food provided for us. It would seem by magic whenever we felt hungry, but often for a week at a time we would not think of food, unless indeed it was one of us who had been fond of good eating on earth. And in that case, the desire would be much more frequent and troublesome to satisfy. For myself, my case had been somewhat simple, and neither eating nor drinking had in themselves possessed special attractions for me. So let's talk about that. You don't need food when you're in heaven. You can exist on water and sunlight. You can, and then actually, then if you just have that and you don't eat, then you can you don't have to evacuate anything. So if you do eat, then you actually have to use their version of a bathroom. So remember, you are a spirit. So we are in this dense body, and you think about and think about how they fashion logically. They fashion the Earth to make this dense. This heavy gravity, this dense atmosphere that pushes us down. We have to eat a lot just to survive in this gravity, just to walk around, because we have this, it's like being down in the ocean. You can feel the weight of the ocean. Well, we're just so used to it, we don't feel it, but it's there, and it causes us to use a lot of calories. And causing us to use a lot of calories means that we must work hard to feed ourselves and survive. That's on purpose. We weren't put into the Garden of Eden where we could just take the apple and live our life in eternal bliss, even on the physical world, because what would that teach us? That would not improve our character and our personality. In fact, Spiritism tells us that whole myth of Garden of Eden is really brought to us by spirits who were on a more advanced planet, a planet of regeneration. And since they did not fit into that planet of regeneration, they refused to conform to the higher moral standards, they were sent to Earth. And then from that, they had this identification with a paradise place that was much better than the chaotic and dog-eat-dog world on Earth. So now again, he says we don't think of food. So if you're not thinking of it, you really don't need it because you're absorbing. And he's drinking. Now, it might be harder for them to absorb because they don't have much sunlight there. It's dim, but the water's probably is filtered and given to them in their little place. So that shows you you don't need that, and he's actually proving that right there. Now, many people will come to me and say, "Well, but I really like eating. I want to eat." And when you're at the first levels of heaven, you can still eat. In fact, in the book No Solar by the medium Francisco C. Xavier, they had like I forgot how many years, or the governor of the city is trying to get people like, you only need water and some sort of soup-based sustenance. But people really like eating. They're in that habit, and but it took them a while to start training people not to eat. And what I say is that as you rise higher and higher, is just like this person is saying, he wasn't hungry, until someone kind of said it to him. Because it's just like in real life. If you're doing something you really love and you're concentrating, that you don't think about food. You can go all day and not even think about food. Whereas when you start thinking about it and you're bored, I remember like when at work, and sometimes between meetings you're kind of waiting and then you just want a snack, which is not good for you, but it gives you something to do and gives you a little bit of pleasure between tasks. But that kind of goes away when you are in heaven. Okay, let me carry on. There's always around us this twilight, which was never varied with dark night or bright day, and which was mostly especially trying to me in its monotony. I so love light and sunshine. To me, it was ever as life-giving bath. I've been born in the land of earth where all the sunshine and flowers. And again, this is, seconded in Spiritism. And when you're in heaven, it's in the higher zones, it's always light. Now, in the lower levels of heaven, they will kind of conform to the light dark 24-hour cycle as where they are geographically spaced over the earth. So if you're over, let's say, Kansas City, you will see light and day at the same hours of Kansas City in the lower levels of heaven. And that's because those people in the lower levels of heavens are still associated with and affected by what's happening on earth. As you go higher and higher, that ends, because you understand that earth is just a kind of like a summer camp. You're sent there to improve your character and your personality. That what happens there, that's fine. You want people to improve, but everyone's immortal. Whatever happens, happens. It's not that big of a deal. The big deal is for them to get through their classes. We carry on. Then, although we usually walk about this building and its surrounding country, much as you do, we could float a little at will, though not so well as more advanced spirits do. And if we were in a great hurry to go anywhere, our will seem to carry us there with a speed almost of thought. So, let's talk about that for a second. Speed almost of thought. And that is true. Now, the speed, now you can go, if he was a higher spirit, he could say, and he had the permission to go and expand past the levels of heaven and earth, he could go to Saturn or Jupiter or another galaxy instantaneously. There's no speed of light, maximum speed in the spirit world. It is the speed of thought. And so when he wanted to go someplace and he thought, if I want to go there, what he did is he changed the environment around him and he went into that environment. In fact, the spirits tell us you don't really think, you can't think of distance. It's presence or absence. And when you think, and if you're not there, then you say, okay, no, I want to be there, and you go. Now, you can also do an alternate one, just kind of float along and be there and kind of look at the transition and the scenery. So it's kind of like an app, right? You can have your character kind of move across landscapes, which is all logical landscapes, right? It's all programmed. Or you may have the capability is to move your avatar, like, okay, go from this country to that country and just appear there. It kind of shows you how utterly complex and just miraculous the spirit world is. Think about this for a second. Think about this for a second, where he can just think and go somewhere. What does that imply? That has to imply you're in a logical construct. You're not in an area defined by physical boundaries. You are in a logical construct. You are in this wonderful world of limitless possibilities. And when you rise in heaven, you'll have omniscient power. You'll be, you would be, as back in the old ancient days, you'd be considered a god. You could show up, you could materialize, dematerialize, you could create things with your mind. That is what we used to think was one of the minor gods. This is all possible, but for anyone here on earth, but it takes effort. You have to study, absorb the lessons of the spirit world. You have to rip out your primitive emotions, because why would they give this power to people who could use it for bad, use it, in response to a negative emotion? No, you can't have that. You've got to get rid of those negative emotions. That's why you really need on earth is not just change, not just keep your mouth shut when you have something bad to say. You really need to rewire your brain. That is really the most important thing to do. And rewire your brain by always following your conscience and thinking positive, good thoughts. Let me carry on. As for sleep, we could spend long intervals without feeling its need. Or again, we could lie and sleep for weeks at a time, sometimes semi-conscious of all that passed, at others in the most complete of slumbers. Okay, again, this is true. Now, as you raise higher, you don't need sleep. You really don't need sleep, because you get energy and there's things to do. And of course, in the lower areas, they can sleep and they can spend long intervals and they can kind of go in this comatose state if they wish to. So again, as they get higher and higher, he's correctly describing what life is like in the lower zone. Now he's in a nice place in the lower zone because he's in a colony, and he says they take a walk. So I don't know. He hasn't really. Most colonies in the lower zone have this big wall around them. They actually have defensive weapons. So because there's these gangs that will try and take your territory or invade it or want you out of there, because people will come to your colony to escape being a slave to these gangs. It's kind of like the lower zone is run by warlords or mafia bosses. And it's actually even worse type of chiefs and dictators and the really cruel ones in the dark abyss. So another strange thing was our dress, which never seemed to wear out and renewed itself in some mysterious fashion. So, let me finish this sentence. All through this period of my wanderings, and while I was in this abode, it was of a very dark blue color, with a yellow girdle around the waist and an anchor worked in yellow on the sleeve, with the words, "Hope is eternal," below it. These were close-fitting undergarments of the same dark color. The robe was long and such as you see penitent brotherhoods or monks wear on earth, with a hood hung from the shoulders, which could be used to cover the head and face of any who desired to screen their features from view. And indeed, there were often times when we wished to do so, for suffering and remorse had made such changes in us that we were often glad to hide our faces from the gaze of those we loved. The hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, wasted and bent forms, and deep-lined suffering that traced upon each face told their own story but too well. And such of us had dear friends on earth or in the spirit land, still grieving for our loss, thought often at times to hide from their eyes our disfigured forms and faces. So let's talk about that. So in the spirit world, when you're in heaven, you wear what you think you want to wear. And as I talked before, you mentally you can clean your garments and you can press them and they'll never lose this perfect crease, right? They'll be perfect because that's what you want them to be. Now, these lower spirits who haven't quite understood that, most probably they were given a suggestion, an auto suggestion by a higher spirit. Okay, your mind is gonna wear this clothes. It's gonna look like this, and you'll see in descriptions in the spirit world, a lot of people will wear different stones around them, different color robes. And again, he had hope is eternal below it, right, on his sleeve, and a yellow girdle around the waist, which just kind of showed them probably it's a uniform of the brotherhood. And you'll see that a lot. You can actually tell kind of the person's level and what they're wearing a lot of times by of the level of that person by what they're wearing and the stone that they have and kind of what their profession is at that moment. They can change different groups and go different places. But so you don't have to wear that uniform if you don't want to as you go higher and higher, but you can usually tell where that person's from. So a lot of that, because it's just easy. Of course, there's parties and gatherings where you change and you wear what you want to wear, and I've heard of parties where people's garments change with their mood at the party. So there's a lot of fun things too. Okay, let me carry on. Our lives had somewhat of monotony about them in the regular order, in which our studies and our lectures followed each other like clockwork. At certain stages, for they did not count time by days or weeks, but only as advance was made in the development of each spirit. When a lesson had been learned, in a longer or shorter time according to the spiritual and intellectual development, the spirit was advanced to a higher branch of the subject studied. Now, this remains true for your whole time in the different levels of heaven. Now, the spirits who talked to the Reverend G. Val said there's 10 levels, but they said other people say there's certain different number of levels, but they tried to be consistent. So there's many spirits talking to the Reverend G. Val, and they said, we'll use 10. So like the levels 1 through 3 are still kind of tied to Earth. They may be, you'll have the day and night of Earth, but at each level, there are schools in the smaller areas, right? The smaller little colonies. And then there's bigger colleges and universities in the bigger cities in those levels, and you'll go through these schools, and then as you graduate, and you have to graduate with knowledge and spiritual maturity, then you'll be at the next level. And there's not like, oh, you're going to go to school for 6 months and you're graduating. It's exactly as Franchezzo says. It's when you are ready, when you learn what you needed to learn, then you will go up. There's no set date. There's no, uh, fall, winter, and spring semester or quarter, whatever you're going through. No, it's you go through that, and you learn, and you are promoted when you are mentally, spiritually ready. And that means you've got to be like Franchezzo. You've got to take out your anger and your thirst for revenge and replace that with kindness and love. Okay, I'll carry on. Some remain a very long time before they can grasp the meaning of the lesson shown to them. If so, the spirit is in no way hurried or pressed on as is done in earth education, where life seems all too short for learning. As the spirit of man has all eternity before him, and can stand still or go on as he pleases, or he may remain where he is till he has thought out and grasped clearly what has been shown, and then he is ready for the next step, and so on. All true. And you don't have to go to school, just like he says. If you're in a level of heaven, or you're in the lower zone, you want to stay there, you have free will. You don't have to improve. I think it's a mistake, but what they do is to urge you on to improve. You will get visits from higher spirits. You may be taken on like a field trip to higher levels, so you can see, hey, this is the reward for going to the next step, just like they do in school. There's no hurrying anyone faster until he chooses to go. No interference with his liberty to live on the same state of undevelopment if he wishes. So as long as he interferes with the liberty of no one else and conforms to a simple rule which governs that great brotherhood, the rule of freedom and sympathy for all. None were urged to learn, and none were kept back from doing so. It was all voluntary, and did anyone seek, as many did, to leave this place, he was free to go where he would and to return again if he wished. The doors were closed to none, either in going or returning, and none ever sought to reproach another with his faults or shortcomings, for each felt the full depth of his own. So this perfectly describes the respect of free will in the spirit world. Now, you can say, well, where's our respect for our free will in the physical world, where you keep telling us we have to go through this planned set of trials? And this is what the spirit world says, is they said, you still have free will, but it's in the choices of what you do in your trials. So look, to be perfectly trying to define this, you are, completely manipulated in your life on earth, and you're manipulated for a good cause. You're manipulated to get rid of your past negative emotions and to learn the effect of your past wrongs, so you don't do that again in your next life. So it's like, would you give a fourth grader free will to take the lessons he or she wanted to? No, because if I was a fourth grader and all I want to do is go eat ice cream all day, right? So that's not going to happen. So no, when we're put on Earth, we go through that. Now, as we go into higher planets, and we still physically incarnate on these higher planets, although a little bit less dense body, we more self-direct. It's more like you go to college and you pick the courses you want in concert and in consultation with your mentor. So, but in the spirit zone, spirit realm, your free will is completely respected once you are at a certain level. And that's why people can park there forever if you want to. You don't have to go back and reincarnate, if you're in that level. But you won't rise. And at some point in time, you'll want to rise. Some had been years there, I learned. For them, the lessons were hard and slow to be learned. Others, again, had broken away and gone back to the life of the earth plane so many times that they descended to the lowest sphere at last and had gone through a course of purification in that other house of hope where I had first been. They had appeared to go back instead of forward, yet even this had not been in truth a progression, but only a needed lesson. since they were thus cured of their desire to try the pleasures of the earth plane again. A few, like myself, who had a strong and powerful motive to rise, made rapid progress and soon passed on from step to step. But there were, alas, too many who required all the hope and all the help that could be given to sustain and comfort them through all their trials. And it was my lot to be able, out of the storehouse of my own hopefulness, to give a share to others less fortunate who were not blessed, as I was, with a stream of love and sympathy flowing ever to me from my beloved on earth, cheering me on to fresh efforts with its promise of joy and peace at last. So again, this reveals so much of the spirit world. This is what's waiting for you. These wonderful people who will just help and help and help. Now, think of this. Now, I know when you went to school and you went to class, you never thought of the organization of, the school district, the number of teachers, the people behind the textbooks, all of the effort went in to teach you what you needed to be taught, right? There was a huge amount of effort. It wasn't just that teacher in front of you. It was a whole army of people, and at a huge cost to the state, to the city, wherever, however it's controlled, or to your parents. Now, as we're adults here, you should think about how much the spirit world is taking care of us. Jesus and God didn't just put us on this earth and left us alone to fend for ourselves, which I thought that was kind of my idea when I was younger. And many people too also, and I don't blame anybody for that, because you don't really see these things. And we're kind of, stubborn people, and we have to have some things right in front of our face. People like me. I hope you're a lot more intelligent people than I was at a younger age. So this is important to think, is that there's so much work done on our behalf that it is amazing. It is just, the love that they give us should be comforting to everyone to know that you're in this life. And think about whatever trial and tribulation you're in. Everybody in the spirit world knew that's what's going to happen. They know what's going to happen in the future. They're hoping that even if it's hard on you, you learn valuable lessons. That's what you should concentrate on. Learn from these trials and tribulations and try to be a nice person through it all. I wasn't successful in many times. Hopefully I'm getting more successful as I get a little bit wiser and older. Let me carry on. And now was given me a fresh source of happiness in being able to spend a certain time on earth with my darling, when she was able to be made fully conscious that I was there. Many times had I been to see her unknown to herself. In all my wanderings, I had found time to snatch brief, happy moments to go to earth and look at her. And now, although I was still almost invisible to her eyes, yet she could tell that I was present and could feel my touch when I laid my hand on hers. She would place a chair for me beside her own, that we may sit side by side again, as in the dear old days that were gone. She would speak to me and could hear faintly what I said in answer, and could even distinguish dimly my form. All the strangeness of sadness, and yet the sweetness of those meetings between the living and the dead. So the spirit world knows that this is really is helping him achieve his goal, right? That's the carrot. And they used her quite rightly to say, look, if you want to achieve being with her at some point in time, because now he understands he's a mortal spirit, when she passes over, you'll be far from her unless you improve yourself. And this really gives him incentive to improve himself. I would come to her with my heart full of the bitterest anguish and remorse for the past. The sense of shame and humiliation of what I had become would be such that it seemed hopeless for one such as I was to rise to higher things. And the sight of her sweet face and the knowledge that she believed in me and loved me in spite of all would soothe my heart and give me fresh hope, fresh courage to struggle on. From the desolation of our lives, there grew up in those strangely sweet meetings a trust and hope in the future that no words can describe. Now, he has all this anguish and remorse for the past. And this is just his past that he just died, right? This is his recent past. So people ask, like, well, am I going to be able to remember all my past lives? And the answer is depends when you're in spirit world. Because think of Franchezzo. If he knew what he had done even in past lives, it'd be much worse than what he did in his just previous life. Much worse. He would feel even horrible, more horrible. And so he's not ready to do that. So he hasn't been allowed to look back at his past lives. Now, for me, I have been given hints of my past lives. I haven't seen it, but people have told me, mediums have told me. And I can tell you quite truthfully that I've never been told of anything good I've done in my past lives. It's always been horrible things I've done. I've been in war. I've shot down people. I've tortured people. I've had slaves. I've robbed. I've been in positions of power. I've stolen money from those I was supposed to be in charge of. And, so believe me, sometimes you don't really want to, you really want to wait till you're, now I can kind of, I shouldn't say laugh at it, but, it's, well, yes, it's like, oh my God, I was a, not a nice person. And, I'm not a great person now, but at least I haven't committed any heinous crimes. I haven't been perfect at all. I've done bad things, but not really terrible, criminal acts. So I have improved. So it just shows you that you may not be ready, right? You may not be ready to know your past lives because it's a lot of burden. And I think the spirit world has kind of only told me bad things because they know that I would latch on to something good I did and I would talk about that. Whereas they're just trying to tell me like, okay, Brian, you can show yourself as someone who actually improved because you were not a good person, right? And you're a better person now. Not that I'm a good person, but I'm a better person and I'm striving to be better. And that's what we want to tell everyone. So I'll carry on. I learned that she had been developing her powers and studying how she could use the truly wonderful gifts which she had possessed and which had lain dormant for so long. And she was greatly pleased to find how well she was succeeding and how rapidly the curtain which shut me out from her was being drawn aside. Then there came to us another pleasure. My beloved had found a medium through whose peculiar organization made it possible for a spirit to clothe himself again in the semblance of an earthly body, similar in appearance to his own and recognizable by friends he left on earth. I was now enabled to materialize, as it is termed, a solid hand with which to touch her. Great was the happiness this gave to us both, though I was as yet denied the pleasure of showing myself to her. I was told I could not do so without bearing on the materialized face the traces of my suffering, and it would only pain her to see that. Later on, when I was more advanced, I could show myself clearly. So let's talk about that. He's even said, like, I want to use the hood because I'm not very good looking. So in heaven, people always say the angels are beautiful. And then they go into the lower zone, they see these animal-like creatures, but they're all, most of them, some are animals, but a lot of them are humans in these deformed ways, right? People are shocked when they go into the lower zone of the dark abyss, or hell, as sometimes they'll call it. And that's because in the spirit world, unlike on earth, you look as you are on the inside. You are on the outside as you are on the inside. In fact, in Spiritist literature, you'll see like this beautiful woman falls asleep on the bed and then comes out of her body to roam the spirit world. Her spirit is this ugly old hag, right? It's kind of like the opposite of Snow White, right? So, and the fairy tales is on earth, your physical body is your physical body. You live in an objective world. It doesn't, doesn't completely reflect your inside beauty. That's why I always say that people can't be beautiful unless they're beautiful on the inside and outside. There can be very pretty and handsome people, but how are they on the inside? That comes out through their eyes and their character. And that is true beauty when someone has combined both. I'll carry on. How many poor spirits would come in crowds to those meetings, hoping for the chance that they too might be able to show themselves and win some recognition. see again someone who was glad to know that they still lived and could return. And how many were always certain to go away sad and disappointed because there were so many and only a certain amount of power, and those who were nearest and dearest were naturally granted a preference. The spirit world is full of lonely souls, all eager to return and show that they still live, still think of those whom they have left, still feel an interest in their struggles, and are as ready and often more able to advise and help than when they were on earth, were they not shut out by the barriers of the flesh. I have seen so very many spirits hanging about the earth plane when they might have gone on to some bright sphere, but would not, because of their affection for some beloved ones left to struggle with the trials of earth and grieving in the deepest sorrow for their death. And so the spirits would hang about them, hoping for some chance which would make the mortal conscious of their presence and their constant love. So, a word of advice. If you feel a presence of a spirit, a loved one that's still hanging about you because they're worried about you, they want to help you, free them. And sometimes these people are locked because the physical people still encase them in their longing. And you hear that in spiritual literature all the time. It's like, let that person go. You're not letting that person get rid of their physical body. You're not letting this person get away from you. They're locked in the lower zone on earth because you just hang on to them and you need them. Let them go. Say, rise up into heaven, study, work, be there. I'm going to be there sooner than you know, right? We're on earth. We're just going through these learning process. Nothing that happens here is the be all and end all of everything. Don't lock yourself into this temporary physical body and this temporary situation. We're immortal spirits. So if you feel that and don't, when someone dies, you don't long for them and trap them on earth because your thoughts will affect them. Let them go. Let them become free to improve themselves in the spirit world, because then when they improve themselves, they can actually help you much better. I'll carry on. Could these but communicate as do friends on earth when one has to go to a distant country and leave the other behind, there would not be such hopelessness or sorrow as I've often seen. And although years and administrations of comforting angels will soften the grief of most mortals, yet would it not be a happier state for both mortals and spirits, could they but hold sweet communion together as of yore? I have known a mother whose son has taken to evil ways, and who believed that mother to be an angel in heaven far away. I've known her to follow her son for years, striving in vain to impress him with the sense of her presence, that she might warn and save him from his path of sin. I have seen one pair of lovers whose some misunderstanding had parted, and between whom death had placed a last insuperable barrier, haunt the beloved one left behind, and seek by all means in his power to convey her the true state of things, and that their heart had been ever true, whatever might have appeared in the contrary. Of course, again, this is all counterproductive for the physical being and the spirit. Let that person carry on with their trials, and let the spirit try to learn and go to these outposts and start taking these classes and learn what it is to be a spirit and learn how the actual process works. So many people die and they don't know anything, right? They've never had any spiritual, never had any type of doctrine like Spiritism, never studied Spiritism, just had the vaguest notion of any religion, and they're completely unprepared for this logical construct of the spirit world, where their mind is so powerful and they just keep acting like they're on earth. It doesn't work that way. I'll carry on. I have seen spirits in such sorrow, such despair, trying in vain to win one conscious look, one single thought, to show that their presence was felt and understood. I have seen them in their despair cast themselves down before the mortal one and seek to hold her hand, her dress, anything, and the spirit hand was powerless to grasp the mortal one, and the mortal ears were even deaf to the spirit voice. Only perhaps a sense of sorrow would be given, and an intense longing to behold again the dead, without the power to know that the so-called dead was there beside them. There is no despair of earth, as great as it often is, equal to the despair of a spirit, when first he realizes in all its force the meaning of the barrier which death has placed between him and the world of mortal man. It is then wonderful that on the spirit side of life, all means are being taken by those who seek to help and comfort the sorrowing ones. both on earth and in the spirit land, to roll back these barriers and to open wide the doors that men and angels may walk and talk together upon earth, as in days of old when the world was but young. And that will happen again. There, we will be closer, and when we incarnate and be physical again, as we transfer to a planet of regeneration, and we will be closer to the spirit world. We'll commune more with the spirit world, and as we go even to the next level, a happy world, we'll commune even more. So there will be more and more of this talking back and forth. If there is much that is trivial, much that seems silly and foolish, even vulgar or grotesque and terrible in the manifestations witnessed through many mediums and in many circles, if there are fraudulent mediums and credulous fools or vain and conceited egoists in the movement, it is not so with all great but unrecognized truth, struggling for acknowledgement, and should not all these things be excused, in view of the fact that they are all attempts, clumsy and foolish it may be, yet still attempts to open the doors and let the light from the spirit world in upon a sorrowful earth. In fact, I know this one spiritist family, his son, I can't remember his exact age, but like just died suddenly, like 20, 21, 22, something like that. And of course they were very sad, but they knew that this person, there had to be a reason, right? And later on, a medium told them, hey, your son's fine. This was all planned. And he didn't know what the plan was. They didn't tell him that. But he let that son go. Oh, he's in a better place. I mean, look, being in the spirit world is so much better than earth. You're never sick. You can go where you want to, within your levels of permission, depending on your level. And I mean, it's just as he's saying, you can travel as fast. You can look at who knows how many worlds. You have a job that you love, and it's just, and yet you're surrounded when you're in heaven by this feeling of love, and you're with great friends who don't gossip about you, don't stab you in the back, right? They're not sarcastic about you when you're in the levels of heaven. Now, if you're in the lower zone or in the dark abyss, it's all there, right? It's like when you're in the lower zone, dark abyss, it's like the worst job you've ever been in, where it's you've got everyone against you. It's horrible. But when you're in heaven, you're surrounded by these wonderful people, and that is really where you want to go. So I'll carry on. Find fault with these faults or misdirected efforts, if you will, but also seek for knowledge to direct them better, and you will help on those who are trying to climb to higher things. And do not try simply to sneer them down and crush and stifle them. Rather, recognize them for what they are, the efforts of the unseen world to lift the veil that hides your beloved dead from your eyes. So that is the end of that chapter. So I hope everyone enjoyed that immensely. And if you'd like to learn more about Spiritism, I recommend first is that you can get on PDF. You can get the Spirits book. Of course, you can buy it Amazon or the FEB bookstore. You can actually click on the picture of Alan Kardec in my website. It'll take you to that bookstore, and you can get it cheaper than you can on Amazon, I believe. I haven't checked the price for a while, but I have a picture right on the top right-hand navigation bar, and it'll take you there. And I recommend everyone kind of read that first. Of course, I have that in MP3, MP4, for something format. I forgot what it's called, but it's an audible format. Also have it on my YouTube channel. The playlist is the Spirits book, and I read every chapter, so you can just go through every chapter of that. It's really is kind of the first thing you should do. If you want to get kind of an overview, a quick overview, it's just like under 100 pages. My book, Spiritism 101, the third revelation, is I have it on PDF. You can download it free on my website. I have links on my website, nwspiritism.com. Again, that's on the right-hand navigation bar. Of course, I also have it in Kindle, paperback, and audible format if you want to do that, but it's available in PDF. It's also available in PDF in French. So a wonderful person translated that for me, so it's in French too. I have all my other books. I have 14 other books in there, and they're most of them are in Kindle, paperback, and Audible. Some are not in Audible yet, but I recommend that you start exploring that, because I think it will really help you understand where you're going through on earth. I mean, that's really what people want to understand is, why do these things happen to me? Why is my life like it is? And I believe that if you start reading, especially my series of 3 books, Heaven and Below, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and How We're Guided by Spirits, those 3 books, it will give you a good survey of the spirit world, and it will tell you what's up in the spirit world. Book 1, book 2, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, will tell you what you are, how you ascend, what tasks do you do when you're in the spirit world. It's a lot of interesting things. Your life is, your life in the spirit world isn't the Elysian fields. It is learning and doing and studying if you want. As I said before, as Franchezzo said, you can do nothing. It seems to get boring after a while, but if you want to do nothing, that's fine. And then the 3rd book is really how we're guided by spirits, by your guardian angel, your spirit mentor, how nations and cultures are also guided, and then what is the future of Earth? How will Earth transform from a planet of atonement, where we are now, to a planet of regeneration? And by the way, we are starting that process right now. We are going from a planet of atonement to a planet of regeneration. I don't know how many years it will take, but we're at the beginning of the beginning, meaning that there are more spirits that are being born that should be here, that are good. Eventually, what will happen is the spirits who refuse to improve themselves and to see the light and to treat each other as they should, like the golden rule, when they pass away, they will be sent to other worlds. And when their world is the planet of regeneration, you will not have ignorant spirits along the crust of the earth or below it giving us bad ideas. We will be surrounded by benevolent, loving spirits. So I hope this helps. I hope that you become interested in Spiritism. Please hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we will talk next week. We'll start again Sundays and Tuesdays. Hit the bell so you can be notified when I do a live stream. And please, if you have any comments, leave some comments. God bless.